We are live again.
What? Once more coming back at you.
Yeah, man. So, as we were just talking about a minute ago, 2 weeks, 2 weeks vacation for us, but not for the
Yep.
planet.
No, definitely not. Never is. Never
Yeah.
is. No.
So what are we going to discuss today?
It's funny. I was thinking about this, and I remember this effect back during Trump 1.0 was there would be these stories that would break, it would be a breaking story, and it
Right.
would be like, oh my gosh, this unprecedented thing that just happened. I remember one of the most hilarious ones was when there was some change in the Air Force normal flight patterns or whatever that involved stopping in this one base in Scotland more often than before. I don't know if
That's
you
right.
remember this.
Yes,
There's
I
this,
do. And
yeah,
the theory was it was to benefit his golf courses or something
it's a
like
golf
that.
course, yeah,
Right.
because sometimes the Air Force pilots, whatever, would stay at his golf course,
Right. And they would
and
bill that to the government, so therefore,
he's using the government to enrich himself. It's an
which
emoluments
technically,
clause.
which technically he was.
Except that it came out that, so this went all over the news. Everybody's talking, oh no, this is it. We finally found it. The corruption we all knew was there, and then it came out that no, this was an Air Force decision that was made long before, that there was something having to do with flight visibility or something like that. And then also, whenever the Air Force would stay at the Trump properties, he would cut them this massive discount. Like the military discount was like below cost. So he's basically like losing money every time they would stay there, but as a way to sort of give back to the troops or whatever, whether that was marketing or whatever. And it was like, oh, he isn't enriching himself, he's losing money, and it wasn't his decision. And so the story just vanished. And it wasn't until like, unless you were reading some of the like what happened to the story thing, you would never find out that it was all nothing. It was completely bogus story. But that
Well,
was
to be fair, he wasn't losing money. He was making money, bringing in revenue on rooms that would have otherwise not been leased. And yes, it wasn't his decision, so they should have corrected that.
anyway. Point being though, it was one of
once
those
once
where
once the airplane leaves the on for the flight, right? All the empty seats are worthless. So the fact that they were sold at a discount, that's still more revenue than empty seats. Same thing in the hotel.
oh, okay. Well,
Makes
anyway,
sense, right? Yeah.
although we were on one flight, my wife and I were on a flight where um, the flight was it was sort of half empty, and we were really crammed into this one spot, and there was these seats that were open. There's just this whole aisle. There's just nobody sitting there, and we're like, hey, can we just like, I mean, no one's here, and we just move over here, just make kind of things easier. Like, no, because those were sort of like plus seats or premium seats, and so you can't have them. And it's like, well, they're right there, like they're like 5 feet
Right.
away from us. Like it's not like
Right.
they're in first class. We're not asking for first class. It was just right there. It's like, no. And they figured it was like, they make more money by like denying people the seat than they do letting them
Well,
have it. Like, oh, okay, whatever. But anyway,
yeah.
my point though is that with a lot of these stories, when you get these like, oh my gosh, unprecedented, this crazy thing happened, like you get to the point where, and I got this way after the first Trump administration stuff, is that it's probably fake, or like if it's not fake, it's so nuanced out that like it might as well be fake. Like even if all the sentences are true, it turns out that all of the context around it are such that it's not really a story, or it doesn't matter. And then even if it isn't fake, um, everyone will just move on to the next bright shiny object in just a couple in a week or two anyway. And so like the point is not that we have this story, but the point is to have like a continuous churn of the most unprecedented thing ever just happened kind of thing. And so I've noticed a little bit of that starting to crank up again, where like you look at the story And like I remember this was happening with right-wing media during the Biden years, and I would tell my right-wing friends, I was like, wait 2 weeks. Like if it's still a thing in 2 weeks, then that'll be something worth talking about. Otherwise, it's probably just noise, you know.
And I'll tell you, it's fascinating to me, like the terms like criminal or criminality or crimes are just tossed around like just complete like and this is, I mean, I have to pick on my friends on the right this time because I mean the stuff that people are alleging are crimes, like this is fraud, this is criminal. It's like it's not fraud. It was dispensed through a lawful process, right? Now, do I find it criminal in quotation marks? Of course, it is. It's criminal.
Like unethical. I disapprove.
Correct. Yeah. I think it's bad or whatever, right? We can make these assessments, but they're far from proven crimes. The whole thing about a crime is, it gets adjudicated and you are convicted and therefore you are a criminal, right? And I think too, like at this time, like people, I don't think this is a good thing, but I mean it's definitely a accurate thing. Is that people don't think of criminality in the same way that they used to. Like here's Trump is a convicted felon. I mean that is a factual statement. He's a convicted felon. Should those crimes have ever been prosecuted in the first place? Completely debatable. And people are like. The people that are like, no, they should never have been prosecuted in the first place. It's like, well, felon schmelon, basically, right? I just remember when.
Like, is he a felon? It's like, technically.
Right. It's like, there was a great picture of years ago, Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg cooking on her cooking show. Yeah. And it said, remember, only one of these people is a convicted felon. Yeah,
as
Martha Stewart. Yeah, exactly. Not Snoop Dogg.
She went to the pen.
She went to the big house.
Served time for that thing.
That's right, man. Yeah. It's fascinating. I think the biggest thing to me, I think if I'm just trying to recap the last 2 weeks, I mean, what do we have here? We have. Can
I give you one
go ahead.
that I think? Can I give you one that I think is just like a non-story?
Sure.
But everybody's yelling about it. The auto pin signatures for Biden.
Oh yeah, totally.
That's totally not like the fact that people are sitting there going like, wait a minute, you're telling me that Biden wasn't in charge of the White House? It's like,
come on.
Everybody, he told us. He would tell us like, he's like, oh, he wasn't totally aware of what was being signed under his name. I'm like, yeah, we already know. The constitutional remedies for that are impeachment or having his cabinet remove him. Neither of which happened.
Nothing.
So it's like if there was no congressional investigation forcing him out or anything. So like it's going to go get adjudicated. There's going to be something where it's like, well, his signature on it's not valid because it's auto pen, and then the judicial branch is going to be like, well, that's a co-equal branch of government.
That's
and
right.
So they said that it's a signature. Then it's that's it.
And they're not. They're not in a position to review it. It's like it's so dumb.
Going to just go away, but it's like everyone on the right is losing their minds over the auto pen. It's like, this is not a story, guys. I'm sorry, this is not a thing.
The irony too is that guess how Trump signed all the pardons for the January 6th people that he pardoned. Auto pen.
I have no idea. Was it auto pen?
Yeah, that's what they're reporting. So it's like, I mean, how do you go and you got to sign 1,200 and some pardons? Like, of course it's auto pen.
Like, that's one of those where it's like, even if you found it, even if it's like the worst version of it, that Biden is sitting there, eating his ice cream and he has no clue what's happening. And
which I would bet my bottom dollar that it was a bunch of admin flunkies who had access to the auto pen and rushed out. Let's get 5,000 pardons out here in the last 24 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or whatever else it was. And, whether it was his administration flunkies or if it was his wife or whatever, it's like, yeah, okay, take whatever worst version of this. And let's say even that some of those administration flunkies were paid to do it, or like someone slipped them something or paid them promises. It's like, it's not going to be judicially reviewable anyway. It's pardon. Like, it's core powers of the executive. So it's like, too bad, so sad. Like it. All right,
Yep.
yeah, you get the moral high ground. This is not a story. So,
Yep. I agree, 100%.
Yeah. So
This is pretty silly.
That one I'm very confident is not a real story. Have you found one that you think probably what for all? Let's start this way. Do you have a favorite non-story of the last couple of weeks that you're pretty sure this is not a thing? This is going to blow over real quick.
Yeah, I think the deportation of these Venezuelan Tren de Aragua people to El Salvador, and people are losing their minds over it.
Like he didn't have the authority. Turn the plane back. Bring back the terrorists.
Yes, he does. And second of all, like, why would you pick this? Again, it's just mind-numbing stupidity. The things that they're picking to fight over. It's like, dude, this is again a 90% issue. Like, I mean, not every American is for deportation of every illegal, right? I mean, it's a very nuanced position. But most people are cool with violent gang members being deported. Like that's okay, you know? And it's like, hey, we got to make sure.
Bring him back. Yeah, turn the plane around.
And I get, dude, of course, are there some due process concerns here? Yes, there are some due process concerns, and they should be litigated in court. And but this judge, I mean, like, it's kind of crazy. It's like, look, first of all, they're using a statute. The first thing is they're using a statute, and they're in the news saying, well, this is a 200-year-old statute. It's like, yeah, the Constitution's 200 years. I mean, like, they're pretty old, you know? It's the same exact thing that I've told people in Trump, the first version, when people are like, oh, that's the Logan Act, you know, like that's an old law. Nobody cares about it. I'm like, it's a law that's still on the books and is totally valid. Like they can use these laws for whatever they want. And I mean, I think if we've learned anything from the last, like, 4 or 5 years, it's that prosecutors or legal mechanics, let's call them legal mechanics. Okay, so on the prosecutorial side and the defense side, there's so many laws that are out there that you can literally just kind of pick and choose. Like, okay, well, if we use this law this way, even though it was intended for this other thing, but it's a law, it's on the books, it has these words, so we're going to use it, and we're going to use it in this way that was completely not intended to. But now we have a crime. Now we can prosecute the crime, etc.
It's like using the Enron document destruction case to prosecute the
January 6th. Yes.
January 6th. You're like,
right. Come on. I mean, it's not, but whatever. I mean, that's fine. And you would think that when it gets into this court system, that the judges that oversee these cases would have enough legal background and enough judiciousness to say, hey, guys, this case is bullshit. You can't bring this case. That's not what this law is for. You're wasting the court's time. Get out, right? Mm-hmm. But they don't, or they do, and then they shop around for a friendly judge, and then they do it that way. So I mean, so we're seeing all this happen. So these guys have been real smart. You could say brilliant, or you can say diabolically clever, depending on your point of view.
Right.
But what they've done is they have done their homework. They went and they found statutes to support almost every single thing that they've done. Even Doge, they didn't even create a new thing. Yeah, they repurposed an existing agency that Obama wasn't doing anything, and they said, okay, your purpose is now this, right? And there you go. And it's got all the congressional funding and everything. And I mean, everything they've done has been I's dotted, T's crossed. They've had years to plan this, and so I think this one, I mean, that law is very clear. It's been adjudicated multiple times that the president has now what he's done, you could argue, is he's declared that we're in a war, which is not really a war by any technical definition, and he's declared that we are under invasion, even though this is not an invasion in any recognized sense. But because he's declared it, he signed these executive orders saying that it's an invasion, saying that we're at war. Now it brings this law can be used, and that law says when you're under invasion by a foreign government, that you can deport anybody that's associated with that, and it's not subject to judicial review. I mean, it says so in the law. And so they're basically, I think what they did here is they basically hung some bait out there, and these
They took the bait.
Idiots.
That's what I find amazing is that
Yeah.
the bait was, I mean, it's like the shiny object. They're like, let's get it. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh no, now you're going to discredit this whole operation.
And they're really screwed in the sense that, like, what I mean by screwed is like the people on the left that are like, for example, I'm a person who's a big fan of due process. And so initially, when I first heard this story, that was my initial reaction was like, this is not cool, man. You can't just like blow off a judge. I mean, he's telling you gotta. But at the end of the day, like, because of how they brought the lawsuit and under what the building blocks that were already in place, they put themselves in a situation now where they're going to appeal this, and it's eventually going to go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's going to come back and further affirm his rights to do this under this statute. And it's just going to actually lock in more power, which I'm not a fan of, for him. So my personal view, I'm not a fan of the totally predictable outcome here. And if I'm rating the card players here, I mean, he's got, he's making them look like idiots. So
it's the 40 chess.
Yeah.
Someone on his team. I'm thinking it's Bondi. Bondi is orchestrating some of this stuff.
No, I don't. I think it's Miller for sure. Steve Miller and these guys at the Heritage Foundation that did this Project 2025. I sent you that months ago, and I said, "Hey, check out what they're planning to do." And even the guy that was just forced out of during the campaign, they forced out the guy who headed up the Project 2025 from Heritage. He's sidelined now. He's got his own consulting company that he started. He'll be fine. But they interviewed him last week, and he was like, "I couldn't be happier." I mean, they're basically doing. They planned out everything, and it was completely documented. The press had a hold of it. It was a real story. And again, they just kind of played it. Oh, I don't know anything about this. What are you talking about? Oh, some wacky stuff in there that we're totally going to do.
The right has had just the meme right. So like right-wing social media has had a wonderful time with this thing. Like there have been one was showing a splashdown of the astronauts coming back from the space station after they've been. Well, there's a debate about whether they were stranded or not. They were up there longer than anticipated, but
they were completely stranded.
Maybe they weren't stranded, but anyway.
Sure.
So they were like, federal judge demands astronauts be returned to the space station, kind of stuff. Or it's like, federal judge demands, blah, blah. They're like, yeah, whatever.
Right.
Like, these guys are jokers. But I think it discredits in a lot of ways that, like, the more that these sort of big bait things are taken, the more it's like you're going to start to see a real push to say, shut down things like nationwide injunctions. So you already see this a little bit.
But that won't happen.
Clarence Thomas,
conservatives
talked about this.
Conservatives benefit from that way more than Democrats do.
Well, exactly. Well,
so I don't.
Liberals.
That's
not necessarily party, but like people who. So I personally think nationwide injunctions are an extremely useful and powerful tool.
Exactly.
So I don't want to see them go away, but if it's one of those like, because of you we can't have nice things kind of deal, where it's like, well, if you're going to have people willing to just take the bait on stuff to where like nationwide injunction, it's like, oh, nationwide injunction, that's for 30 minutes while I wait and get an emergency stay from this appeals court or whatever, or we'll just ignore it and then pending whatever. So like, well, nationwide injunction, that doesn't mean anything, or it does gum up the works to stuff that is clearly legal, and you get nationwide injunctions that are pretty obvious should never have happened, then the whole tool will just get taken away. And it's like, okay, you can do an injunction for your district, for your thing, but not for the entire circuit, and definitely not for the whole country. So it's like, you'll see like the Eastern Division of Texas do an injunction on something, or something or Philadelphia court do an injunction, and it'll only apply to that part of Pennsylvania.
I don't see how that's gonna. I mean, you may be right, but I don't see how that's I don't see how that's workable, and B, it's kind of like the filibuster.
You already have that. You can already do localized injunctions.
Right, but you can also do national injunctions, and that's. I mean, I don't see the power to do that's going to be taken away. I mean, who's going to take it away?
Well, so there's a move inside the Supreme Court to do that. So, like I said, Thomas and Gorsuch have already been talking about this a great deal. Kavanaugh has a little bit, And then
It's
you
a
also get a
very,
few.
it's a very minority position. I just don't see
No, no.
that.
Well,
Okay.
I think it's one of those where it's like they don't want to constantly be given emergency appeals on stuff for things that are sort of obviously shouldn't be nationwide injunctions.
All they have to do is decline to take them.
Well, no, that's the thing, is that if you have an injunction on something, it's like, well, obviously this has to be overturned. This injunction has to be overturned because the injunction is clearly wrong, but they've just found some judge out there willing to do a nationwide injunction. Then it's like, well, like when the Ninth Circuit does crazy stuff, and they're like, well, okay, California and Washington, Oregon, they're going to have to suffer under that while it works through the appeals. But when the Ninth Circuit does something crazy, it's not then also applying to, Arkansas. Like it's just confined to that area. But if you have a federal judge out,
I get the idea. I just don't see it ever happening. I mean, I can understand them being annoyed at having to deal with this stuff, but that is, at the end of the day, it's like, dude, that's why you have a job, And I don't think I have never yet seen somebody who has power give that power away, and I don't think the judiciary is any exception.
The Supreme Court is not going to give away that power, but they're basically, what the argument is that nationwide injunctions have to come from us. you can do it.
I don't see that. I mean, I get what you're saying. I don't, even on the face of it, as I'm listening to you, I don't even think it's a bad idea. I just don't see him doing it.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
The justices have talked about it at length, but I don't want that. I want you to, like, if there is a bad law, then, or like an unconstitutional, when a regulation gets promulgated, I would love to be able to have a judge say no and like shut it down for the country as a whole, instead of being like, well, we're gonna have to do this piecemeal. We're gonna have to do it, in every venue, kind of thing. That seems really bad to me, but I think that may be something that winds up happening, just because. I mean, the conservatives did it quite a bit to Biden. Like
all the time, exactly.
All the time. Like there's like, oh, we're going to sign this thing. Like, no, we're going to find some judge somewhere to be like, actually, you can't do that.
Shut it down. Ken Cuccinelli will hook us up down in Austin, man.
We'll figure it out.
Whatever. Yeah.
So what do you think? Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, the reason I don't think, certainly not for this case, because there is no. I mean, they can use whatever terms they want, but there is no emergency. There is no, I mean, the house is not burning down. These guys would not have suffered from staying another week or two in jail. Like basically in the United States. I mean, this is basically a big, burn
who has the authority to declare the emergency though?
I'm not saying that there's not, that the president has not declared an emergency. I'm just saying in terms of emergencies, this one is not like, oh my God, we have to get this done because the Russians are about to attack. That's not a thing. So like, what's the
allies, man.
And what's the national security? They were saying, oh, we can't tell the judge like who's on the plane or where they, because national security. It's like national security. Venezuelans with anti-aircraft missiles. What are you talking about?
Could be. You never know.
Yeah.
Well, hey, this is yet another reason I think that a lot of these discretionary powers need to be rolled back. That because it turns out that legally we live in something that's very much like a tyranny legally, but that through sort of convention or tradition, no chief executive actually uses the laws in the way that it's possible for them to be used. And so you wind up with it's like not a tyranny by choice, but legally it is.
Did you ever watch that show? Did you ever watch that show, The Tudors? I think it was on Showtime. Henry VIII.
No, I never did.
So it follows what's the guy's name? Jonathan Rhys Meyers, the actor that plays young Henry VIII, who's like very active, agile, virulent young man, right?
Yeah.
Defender of the Catholic
in England.
Defender of the Catholic faith. I mean, the whole thing, right? And he becomes king, and then infamously he beheads all his wives as he's trying to get, whatever, kills it, and eventually removes England from the Catholic Church and creates what we now know as the Anglican Church. There's a scene in I feel like it's like the first season, maybe. He's got this spiritual advisor, is this older, wiser man or whatever.
Okay.
And Jeremy Northam plays that guy. And he says, he's remarking to a friend of his, he's like, this could be very dangerous because he's young and he doesn't, because he's he's a prince, he's a new king, he doesn't really understand the extent of his powers. And it would be better if he didn't discover those for a long time, basically, because when he does discover that he can basically do whatever he wants, it could be, this guy could be disruptive, which in fact he was historically. So,
right.
But I think about that a lot because, especially now, you're right. There are so many laws that have been passed over the past World War II, let's say, where, think about it. Like if you read the Constitution, which I just reread it a couple days ago, just for kicks, light reading.
It's historical. It's a historical oddity.
Yeah. It also is very strong on the powers it gives Congress. Like Congress has so many powers. Like Congress has the power to declare war. Congress has the power to raise money. Congress has the power to spend money. Congress has all these different things. Congress basically, the way they saw it was Congress basically
is
the government. That's right. It's a government of the people, right? And then the president is kind of over here, Article 2, not Article 1, Article 2. He's in charge of basically implementing Congress's vision, right? So, and what's happened here is that over the years they've passed so many different laws. Congress basically ceded so much of their power, especially since the rise of these agencies under FDR, Wilson and FDR established all these alphabet agencies, whatever you want to call them, right? That have basically, they've outsourced all of the effective government to the executive branch. All these agencies live under the executive branch. And so when people are freaking out about, you can't dismantle this, you can't dismantle, that's Congress established that. It's like, okay, yeah, Congress established it, but it's run by the president. And because you've outsourced all this stuff, when they dismantled, I told you like a year and a half ago, when they dismantled, when the Supreme Court overturned Chevron, where that was way bigger than most people gave it credit for. And basically what they did, it's a favor to Congress. It's like, look, these agencies don't have the
executive with it.
Right. These agencies don't have the power to set law. You do. So you pass laws, Now, granted, we have a much more dysfunctional Congress now than maybe we've ever had, but that's our fault. We elected these people. So, but because of all these statutes, these laws and things like this, this act was passed a couple hundred years ago, but still they've never rewritten it, never revisited it. And they've never curtailed it. And it's like, okay, well, these powers exist. There is nothing to stop the president from declaring anything. And you can sit here and debate it in the press and all this other stuff. The only people that can stop it are Congress to stand up and go, as of this date, we don't recognize any national emergency. There is no national emergency for this, and any programs affected to that need to be shut down immediately. That they can do that, but they're not going to do that. And so he's basically just unfettered to do. And they've got a good team scrounging through, finding these laws that they can leverage to this effect. And I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing. It's just I don't think it's a good thing. Do I think it's exceptionally bad in the hands of these people? Debatable. The priorities that they seem to have are priorities that most people are on board with in terms of immigration, safety, et cetera. They're not overly. If this had been given to Bush and Cheney, if they had actually leveraged these things, I would be very terrified.
Terrified.
And frankly, even the last group, Biden, they were in here knowing that he was basically not present and being run by a shadow government. I don't know who these people are. I don't know where these initiatives came from. Most people seem to be like, you're doing what? Right. So I wouldn't have felt comfortable with it in their hands too. But what really bothers me about this is that, let's say for the people that are listening that just love Trump and just think he's the best, right? Okay,
Mhm.
let's pretend that he is. Okay, in 3.5 years, these guys are going to be out of here, and I mean, maybe your guys win, maybe they don't, and all they're doing right now, without some serious structural reexamination by the people, by Congress, by people demanding Congress look whatever it is. Um, yeah, I mean, we're getting into that territory where you may just find yourself not necessary, not relevant, um,
Yeah.
maybe not even assembled. So,
Well, it's one of those. It's like the first rule of. Well, I can't remember where I read this, but it's like the first rule of determining if a new law is a good law is imagine the
that your
group,
opponents were using
party,
it on you.
opponent, whatever.
Yeah,
Let's say they're in charge of implementing it. Do you still
right.
like the law? And it's like if the answer is absolutely not, then it's probably bad law. You know.
Yeah,
So I think that's probably the situation that the right is in right now. Is that there's a lot of woohoo, like we got it, we won, we can use all these levers. It's like that's great, but this is very temporary, and a year and a half we're going to see the House flip almost certainly. It's extremely rare for a president to gain seats in his midterm.
although
Um,
Biden did. So
Yeah, but it's very rare. But like if
it
that
is rare. Yeah.
happens, fine. But it's like I would just anticipate like, you know, what was it that when in 2018 when the squad was elected for the first time and they're like, we're gonna go in there and impeach that,
Yeah, SOB.
that guy, and it was like
Commander in
shocked a lot
Thief.
of people. But it was like, well, no, that's that immediately like that's what Congress becomes is the standing committee on impeachment. But I have a feeling they learned from last time that's not actually going to work. So like just imagine whatever it's going to be. It's like it's going to be the standing committee on something that you're not going to like. So how much do you want these laws to be in the hands of the other guys? Like,
Well, it's not like we have to like look deep into history. I mean, like,
right.
this crowd was just in charge, and we saw what happened, like, 8 years ago.
Deep into history. 9 months ago.
Right.
5 months ago. 5 months ago.
Yeah.
Oh,
Exactly.
no. Deep into history. Hey, there is one issue that you had brought up a little bit ago offline that you wanted to talk about, and that was I think is one that's still going on right now. So I think it has lasted the multiple week test, and it has to do with free speech, college campuses, and the use of federal oversight for and also we've seen a couple of deportations or
Yep.
at least attempted deportations of campus protesters and so on.
Yep.
So I know that had come up a couple weeks ago, and that we talked about it a little bit offline. What about this story? Because I remember you were like, this is a big deal. This looks like it has some staying power. What about this kind of called your attention in a special or unusual way? Just the fact that it was happening at all, or
well, I mean, so just to maybe go back and get people familiar, with if you guys aren't aware, right? So it's a case about this Mahmoud Khalil guy, who I guess was at Columbia and was the negotiator for during the what's the name of that hall that was under?
Oh yeah, isn't Columbia University?
Yeah.
It's sort of occupied. I don't know what to call it.
I'm just trying to see here if I can pull up
Hamilton Hall.
Hamilton Hall. Yeah. Let's see if I can pull up something here.
So this is from today. Oh no, this was about a week ago. So the Columbia students who occupied Hamilton Hall in pro-Palestinian protest expelled and suspended. So this is from ABC News. I don't know how how much credence we want to give that, but this one looks like just straight reporting. Columbia University said students who occupied the campus's Hamilton Hall during pro-Palestinian protests last spring have been expelled, suspended for several years, or had their degrees temporarily revoked. Okay, so this is what the DOE or the DOJ had said. So like what all did they do? Okay, in late April 2024, pro-Palestinian protesters occupied Hamilton Hall hours after defying the order to disperse. Barricades were set up by protesters outside the occupied building. NYPD officers finally raided the hall and arrested dozens of protesters. According to a letter, an individual hid in the building at Hamilton Hall until it was closed, let others in. His group's purpose was, quote, occupying the building. Two security guards were inside the building at the time. University said in the letter they were able to secure their release, like they were hostages or something.
Right.
We believe that while the group who broke into the building includes students, it is led by individuals who are not affiliated with the university, the letter read. The individuals who have occupied Hamilton Hall have vandalized university property and are trespassing. And then they also assaulted police officers. Interesting. They dropped a lot of charges. And then there was a bunch of disciplinary investigations that went on afterwards.
Yeah, so, I'm trying to find the where the administration basically had demanded new disciplinary rules. Okay, here it is. Okay.
Because there's quite a list, as I recall.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So I don't really have a problem with them deporting this guy. Frankly, and I think Rubio made a really good case, which is like, look, first of all, he's not a citizen. So we're not talking about, we were talking about like free speech rights and things like this. There are certain rights that we have as citizens that, visitors, immigrants, et cetera, especially people, here that are political activists that are not citizens. They don't have the same rights. That being said, they do have rights, and they do have rights to free speech and free assembly and things like that, where they can get a foul is if they are either breaking the law or there's a certain scale of disruption that under immigration statutes might be problematic. And I think this guy crossed a few of them,
Okay.
So
for his individual case, you're kind of like,
I don't really.
Reasonable.
I'm not upset about that. And I think that that people that are making this big, but you're separating his family. He's got a wife that's American, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, well, I mean, if he cared about those things, he maybe shouldn't have been organizing, these, it's one thing, again, I'm not, first of all, like, for example, I'm not a fan of the Israeli government policies towards the Palestinians. Okay. Now, Hamas is a different story, but they have to take into consideration. They have residents they're responsible for their living, which they're not taking into consideration nearly to the extent that I think they should be. And for people that are like, well, hey, they have a right to defend themselves. Yeah, of course they do. They just don't have a right to defend themselves with my money and my rockets and my nukes and everything else, right? Like we're tacitly approving of what they're doing by continuing to fund them. And by now verbally saying it's all good, go wreak havoc, So to me, I'm not down with that, and I think that should be protested, and it's completely valid to protest it. Whether you're a student or not a student or a citizen or a visitor or whatever the case may be, why would we? I think these laws that carve out the government of Israel as like this protected foreign government that we're not allowed to criticize in certain ways, it just reeks of I don't want to call names. It's not right,
Sure.
In my opinion,
criticize whoever you think is doing wrong.
I have the right to criticize my own government, but somehow I don't have the right to criticize that government. It's just crazy. Okay, so anyway, that aside, right? The demands that the administration is placing on Columbia specifically is, I think, a slippery slope to somewhere we just don't want to be. Okay, so these are the demands. So basically, there's a preamble to this letter, saying why they have the authority to ask for what they're asking for. But it says basically these next steps, and I'm going to just read this. So this letter outlines immediate next steps that we, government, regard as a precondition for negotiations regarding Colombia's continued financial relationship with the United States government. Please ensure and document compliance with the following no later than the close of business today. So no, pardon me. It says Wednesday, March 20th. So they misstated that. So okay. So maybe they could use that as
maybe it's a different year.
Your date was confusing. Okay. So here's their 9 demands. So number 1, enforce existing disciplinary policies. The university must complete disciplinary proceedings for Hamilton Hall and encampments. And then underlined, meaningful discipline means expulsion or multi-year suspension. So they're micromanaging the disciplinary policies. That's number 1. Okay. Which I just think problematic. Like, so you're going to interfere in their ability to discipline their own students. Okay. Number 2, primacy of the president in disciplinary matters. So abolish the university judicial board and centralize all disciplinary processes under the office of the president, and empower the office of the president to suspend or expel students with an appeal process through the office of the president. Again, that's dealing with the way the university decides to govern themselves. Okay. Number 3.
Can I interject a couple things?
Sure.
Yeah. Just as we go through. So,
well, and I would love to hear your opinion, because you work at a university.
I work at a university. So, so the first one of the things that I think we were concerned was going on, was that there was a pretty stark difference in how disciplinary things were applied. So if you have a policy against, say, assaulting police officers, or taking over buildings or something like that, vandalism, and you say, well, okay, this one group, we're going to punish them very severely, but this other group, we're just not going to punish. Or we're still investigating. It's like, well, we've got video, and like, it's hard to say what should happen next, and so it's like, okay. These are rules that are on the books. You're applying them to this. You're just, for whatever reason, have decided not to apply them to this one group. That's got to stop. You've got to start applying them everywhere. You can't just give one group a free pass on the rules. So that's one. The second one has to do with, a lot of times, the sort of plausible deniability side of things. So one of the things that the president's office can do, because that's who the DOE is going to call, right? The DOE is going to call the president's office and go, hey, what's going on here? Like, we're getting these complaints that whatever. And then, oh, well, it's not me. It's the disciplinary board. And disciplinary board is made up of these things, and it's none of my business. And so the disciplinary board, whatever it is, they can spin their wheels or do nothing. And the president always has the ability to just be like, well, it's not me, it's them, And so it's like, okay, we need accountability. And because I'm not even. I appreciate your point. I'm not even done with this list, though. I mean, I know. And having seen the list, there's some things on here I definitely disagree with. But the reason why those two are in place is, if from the administration's perspective, if you have a group of students that are being harassed on campus for, say, race or national identity, like, imagine it was like there was a KKK division on campus that was like protesting Black people, calling them slurs, standing up in class and like shutting down class because it's like, why is this person allowed to be here? They need to apologize for being in America and all this other stuff. And then so the black students are calling up and they're like, hey, what's the deal? Like, I'm being harassed. And then the entire time the university is either stonewalling them or like, well, there's a protest, but we're not sure if they're violating our rules or not. And in fact, the disciplinary board, they're still looking into it. I have no idea.
We're reviewing it. Yeah, we're taking it seriously. We're reviewing it. Yeah.
Well, they are. And I don't even know. I have to stay out of the process to be unbiased. And it's like, no, you're in charge. You're responsible for your school. And that's gotta stop. No more. So that's what those two things are. But go on. Let's keep going.
Time, place, and manner rules. Implement permanent, comprehensive time, place, and manner rules to prevent disruption of teaching, research, and campus life. Basically, set up protest zones that don't interfere with campus life. Kind of what Bush was doing during the.
But that's not what it says. Time, place, and manner.
Yeah, implement permanent, comprehensive time, place, and manner rules to prevent disruption of teaching. So in other words, this is where teaching goes on. This is where research goes on. This is not a place for protesting has to go on in this zone and in this manner and in this time. This is your protest window. These times. No, sorry, this protest has to disband because it's after 5 o'clock or whatever.
So it doesn't say what the protest time, manner, and
well, it doesn't even say protest. It just says time, place. It's very time, place, and manner rules. Yeah.
Right. So it's like you could very easily say with that one, the entirety of the outdoor spaces are protest zones 24/7, but no indoor spaces. So like you can march around campus all day, every day, but in the building where government-funded research is happening, you can't shut down the building. I mean, how much speech is like?
Well, hold on.
You can't break any windows.
I get it. You may not have a. We'll see which ones you have a problem with. Okay, so number 4 is mask ban. So ban masks that are intended to conceal identity or intimidate others, with exemptions for religious and health reasons. I don't have a problem with this one.
White hood. We wouldn't allow white hoods for the same reason.
Right. Any masked individual must wear a Columbia ID on the outside of their clothing, which is already the policy at the medical center. Number 5, deliver plan to hold all student groups accountable. Recognize student groups and individuals operating as constituent members of or providing support for unrecognized groups engaged in violations of university policy must be held accountable through formal investigations, disciplinary proceedings, and expulsion as appropriate. I don't really have a problem with that one either.
That one's formalized, by the way, pretty normal. So
now here we're getting into more crazy stuff. Formalize, adopt, and promulgate a definition of anti-Semitism. President Trump's executive order, whatever, uses the IHRA definition. Anti-Zionist discrimination against Jews in areas unrelated to Israel or Middle East must be addressed. I don't know if you've read the IHRA definition, but it is ridiculously expansive. So it's basically like you criticize anything having to do with Israel, you're an anti-Semite.
Yeah. So so that one I am not in favor of, mainly because how things are defined are like that usually is the thing that's under consideration. I think telling them, hey, you need to have a consistent and clear policy on what counts as discrimination. I don't see a problem with that. But to say you have to use this particular definition, I'm not a fan.
Yeah. Empower internal law enforcement. University must ensure Columbia's security has full law enforcement authority, including arrest and removal of agitators who fostered unsafe or hostile work. I'm shocked they don't have that. So that's.
Yeah, I bet they do, actually.
Hold on. Kyler wants to show me something. Go ahead.
Okay.
Whoa. Oh, but I like that. That's really good. She's going to ninja school.
Ooh,
ninja. Tuck and roll. I like that. Oh, with the side thing, too. Yeah. Yeah. You put your shoulder right on. Yeah. Love that. That's great. Good job. Yeah, you did. And you're doing it well. Because you made it to the top? Oh. They have this wall that kind of curves up like this, and you can run all the way up the wall and grab the very top thing. It's very, very cool.
The warped wall. Yeah, that's ninja training.
Yes, ninja training. Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Good stuff.
Okay, and then the last two here, academic receivership. Begin the process of placing the Middle East, South Asian, and African Studies Department under academic receivership for a minimum of 5 years. The university must provide a full plan with date certain deliverables by today. And then finally, deliver a plan for comprehensive admissions reform. The plan must include a strategy to reform undergraduate admissions, international recruiting, and graduate admission practices to conform with federal law and policy. I don't know why they wouldn't have that one, but it's the one before that, the receivership one.
That last one is probably affirmative action related, since that's now illegal. Then they need to make sure that they're not doing that. The one about, what was the one right before?
Academic receivership for any studies in that region. Yeah.
So what that one is there is a widespread belief, maybe it's true, that these programs aren't academically rigorous, but that they're merely propaganda ones, or agitation centers. So it's like, what's your job as the professor? It's to fight for climate justice or whatever, using direct action, which means you're the one that's out there,
right,
gumming up the works, throwing the wrench into the machine, so to speak. And so usually academic departments are self-governing. So who's the new professor is the one that the other members of the department vote to be the new professor. And who gets tenure is the one that the ones inside the department choose. So if you have an agitation center, then it will permanently be an agitation center. And so what they're hoping to do is turn that agitation center into a regular department. And so for 5 years, which basically is going to involve tenure choices, there's ways to kind of get rid of people even if they already have tenure. And so that receivership will be a way to reform, probably is the word that they would want to use, reform that department.
So here's my problem with this on a macro level, right? Is that on one side there's the argument, well, hey, we're giving them money so we can determine what we want for it, right? I mean, the punishment for this is not jail. It's just we're not going to give you the $400 million that we usually give you. But at the macro level, it's just completely, in my opinion, just completely wrong. And it's like, look, you got a school that has a biblical studies department, and the next president that comes in is a Muslim, and so he doesn't want biblical studies, and because he disagrees with it, hey, the Bible's a dangerous book. It's fomented revolution all over the world, documented. It's responsible for murder and culture collapse in countless countries.
Lots of people have been executed in the name of baptism, for example,
which they have.
True.
And so this is just a completely, it's against our values as a nation, and so whatever. And so now.
Plus, we've heard that their professors actually try to proselytize the students.
Right. Now, but they're not coming after all the universities. Just they target ones where you have a professor who's really good at it or uniquely disruptive, let's say. Maybe he's being really effective. A lot of students coming to Christ over there. Can't have that. So we're going to withdraw your funding unless you get rid of this guy. Mm-hmm. Turn that department over into a serious Bible studies department that has textual criticism and all the other things that you can't just be teaching blind faith over there. It's ridiculous. And not scientific at all, not rigorous. And so everybody would have a problem with that. You can't just single out. It's the same thing that in the insurance business, for example, like insurance carriers can come in and they can raise rates, but they have to raise rates for everybody in the state. They can't just single out somebody and say, hey, you've had a lot of claims, so now your premium is going to be 3 times as much, but nobody else is being affected, just you, because you're the problem. Can't do that. That, and it's the same thing here. You can't. This is. I don't see.
Well, no, it would be. I mean, everybody who has biblical studies departments like that would need to change. Not just you. You're just the first one.
Well, and in fact, it would be outrageous. And so you can say, like, look, you could do this for climate studies. You could do it for anything that people find objectionable.
Yep.
And so where does this? So number one, I have a problem with the government. Hey, we want to stop giving money to universities as a whole. No problem. Let's redirect our money into actual research centers, whatever. That's what's important, right? I mean, there's any number of things that you could relook at how money is being dispensed in the education segment of our economy, and that would be a valid thing to explore, I think. But this is it's just not cool. Even if I agreed with, even if I agreed with everything that the Israeli government was doing and thought that anybody protesting it was whatever, it's still completely just not right, in my opinion. So what's your defense?
No, I don't necessarily have one. I think the thing that always has stuck out to me, so this actually, I remember us talking about this back when you first started going to college. Can I reveal on stream where you
Yeah,
went?
yeah.
Yeah. So you went to, for your first college experience, you went to Pensacola Christian College, which is in Pensacola, Florida, up in the Panhandle. Beautiful white sandy beaches.
Yeah. The only word in that college's name that shouldn't be in quotation marks is Pensacola.
Well, one of the things that they were famous for at the time, which I think they are still the case, is that they take no federal funds of any kind.
That's right.
No student loans, no grants,
and they don't participate in any accreditation either. They're not
no
interested.
accreditation.
Yeah.
And basically, I mean, they have sports programs and they participate in whichever sports leagues that will accept them, and that's it. And one of the reasons that for that, as they said, which I think is probably true, is that if they accepted federal money, then they would have to become obedient to the federal system, whatever that means.
But and I hear you, and that's, of course, that's valid. However, this is the first time, and you say unprecedented and make fun of it or whatever, but it's the first time that any action like this has been taken to specifically curtail, not only curtail speech, but also like insist on a reorganization of the way the college functions in order to receive. It's the first time that's happened.
Yeah.
And
Well,
for all the outrage, which, by the way, I'm equally outraged by I mean, because you've had the speech on the right that has been canceled or whatever else you want to call it on college campus for a long time. And I found it completely outrageous, but it wasn't a government initiative. It was whatever. It was a coordinated effort by academia, is a coordinated effort by academia. I'll give you all that, but I find that equally outrageous. But this is a step up. I mean, now you're using the government to enforce it.
Yeah, I think a lot of this comes down to the nature of the speech that's involved. And I think, unfortunately, in a way, it kind of has to, because college is more than, or university campus is also a community. Even if you're like, well, I don't want to be in community with that person over there. It's like, it still is, right? So there's a lot of shared spaces. And so there's a lot of rules that go beyond what is legal to do or not do. That there's, so for example, if a group of students decided they wanted to form an official KKK group, and I hate bringing this up again, but it's just sort of like a really obvious.
Oh, that's an easy one. Yeah.
Yeah. That it's like, well, no, you have the free speech to do so. You just can't do that here. Like, you just have to go elsewhere if you want to do that group. And for us to tell you can't do it it's not that we violated your First Amendment. It's just that thing goes against our community norms, one, but also two, we are under certain federal laws that prevent a discriminatory environment. So we can discriminate against you based on your height, but we cannot discriminate against you based on your race. And so to be in an environment where discrimination is thrown at you all the time is actually illegal. We could get sued by the Department of Education, which in this case, this is this prelude to that, where it's like, it's not just that you've had people getting up there and criticizing the government of Israel's policies, but you've had sort of the equivalent of the white hoods and stuff towards Jewish students.
But where are the documented cases of that have been litigated or
Right.
brought in court?
Right. So this is one where all I have is anecdotal stuff.
Right.
We could probably look it up.
Because the purpose of these protests was not to protest Jews as people. The purpose of these protests was to protest and we can call it a genocide. I mean, they are killing tens of thousands, if not, I'm sure we're over 100,000 people, Palestinians killed now, by a government that we are funding. So I mean, it's not, and I mean, again, if you take the position that that's totally fine and whatever, okay, it's also, that's what it is a genocide. So it's
what all I'm trying to get across is that yes, that might be what we would say the purpose is, and maybe if you talk to the organizers, that may be what they would say as well. Just in the same way that someone who is, who knows what, someone might just say, well, the reason we're wearing white hats is we're trying to raise attention to, bring attention to the concept of eugenics or whatever it is they might say.
Dude, I'm not going there. We're not talking about people wearing swastikas on their clothes. We're talking about protesting a genocide. I mean, we've been doing this for years. I mean, we did it in Vietnam. We could do any number of different political events.
I think what they're responding to is that, and I need to look up, maybe I can find some, they're responding to what looks to be like incidents of like racial harassment.
Okay, well, if those are, and by the way, if those are happening, it's reprehensible, it should stop, but it's also criminal, as you already point out. So they don't need this letter.
Well, no, that's the thing is, it's not a crime.
No, but it's against the like you just said, you can get in trouble with the federal government because you're violating anti-discrimination laws. So they don't need this letter.
But that's what so here the interpretation that I think that the administration is going for is that that's what this is that, look,
but that's not what it says.
You haven't been disciplining these students for these things. You haven't been following these rules. You haven't been following your own policies. ... So we need now these things to like put the ship back in order, so that we've got, so that you're following the anti-discrimination laws that are on the books.
And again, if they had framed it that way, I wouldn't have a problem with it. That's not the way it was framed. So,
well, yeah. So I think
they blatantly come out and say this speech is what we're not in favor of.
Yeah. So if the speech is the government of Israel is evil or something like that, that's one thing. If their speech was, and we'd have to go look, because I mean, there were plenty of people wearing like the green Hamas bandanas and stuff. If the speech was Jews need to be wiped out, that would violate someone's, non-discriminatory equal access to education. I think it's Title IX or Title V. The Civil Rights Code. So it would be like you again, dude. Like
I got no problem.
And you might say, well, gosh, that's not what the protest was about. But some of the protesters that got out of hand, and yes, those things were said, or people waved around signs that were like reprehensible or would have been considered like very racialized in a way that we would all feel uncomfortable with. And it's like, yeah. And so now that's, if nothing has happened, so if no one's doing anything about it. If it's like, well, no, people need to start feeling uncomfortable with what, or whatever. And they're like, okay, finally, you're going to have to do something. Here comes this letter. And now you notice today or yesterday, yep, okay, the people that were involved in taking over these buildings and doing all this other
Columbia,
now they're finally, now it's finally happening. So it's like, yeah, good. You needed to kick in the pants to get this stuff moving.
Of course, Columbia is going to cave. They need the money. So it's not a big mystery about whether they're going to cave or not, because the government has a much bigger stick than right. So, but that's the point I'm making, is that the government is deploying this stick on behalf of their donors. I mean, that Trump took $150 million from these people. I mean, of course he's implementing their foreign policy objectives.
So I think that's the real crux of the issue here, is if you look at it and you say, so I mean, I've watched some commentary on this, and if it's framed as we've got some protesters that kind of got out of hand as far as some of their methods, but all they were doing was criticizing a foreign government that we happen to be allied with, and they're getting in trouble for criticizing this foreign government.
Well, which is this? It's the same argument that January 6th advocates use, which is, hey, yes, some people got out of hand. Yes, some feces was wiped on the wall. Yes, people broke it, but the vast majority were there peacefully. You shouldn't paint everybody with this broad brush, and you shouldn't change laws that don't need to be changed. That's exactly the same argument. So why wouldn't? But it's like, oh, no. But this one's against Israel, so we have to ban them.
So like, if that's the case, if what was going on was just, we're protesting this foreign government, we don't like their policies, we think they're evil, we're holding up signs saying that these policies are evil, and shame on the US for continuing to be allied with this group, whatever. If that's the case, then yeah, I mean, treat them as trespassers, do whatever, it's fine. The big issue here is, I think, is whether whether it's whether like saying kill all the Jews, whether that counts as anti-Semitism or not. And if you're a Jewish student on campus and you have people shouting that next to you, have your civil rights been violated in being given access to a non-discriminatory place of education? Does that make sense? Oh, I think his feed just went down. That means I can say whatever I want. Well, here, while he's doing that, let me just see. Let me just see what kind of slogans were being chanted at these protests. Okay, so this is Columbia University. They set up a Gaza solidarity encampment. Jewish students were advised to leave campus for their safety. Pro-Hamas and anti-Semitic chants and statements made by those in connection with the encampment have been drawn comment from the White House. So this is in 2024. So this is April. This is last year. So this is from the Biden White House. Hey, you're back.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me okay?
Good. So I looked up some of the stuff that was going on. So this is from April of 24. So this is when Biden was president. So this is not some kind of like pro-Trump thing. So on Columbia University, they set up a Gaza solidarity encampment. And this is the pro-Hamas and anti-Semitic chants and statements made by those in connection with the encampment have even drawn comments from the White House. So this would be the Biden White House. Mm-hmm. Says, quote, while every American has the right to peaceful protest, calls for violence and physical intimidation targeting Jewish students in the Jewish community are blatantly anti-Semitic, unconscionable, et cetera, et cetera. One person, so the Columbia's Orthodox rabbi suggests Jewish students to leave campus for their safety. Protesters stood in front of pro-Israel students who were waving Israeli and American flags with a sign reading, Al-Qassam's next targets, referring to the military wing of the Hamas terrorist organization. A man yelled at Jewish students, quote, never forget the 7th of October. That will happen not one more time, not 5 more times, not 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000. The 7th of October is going to be every day for you. A crowd chanted, Al-Qassam, you make us proud, kill another now. Demonstrators yelled, Jews, Jews in Arabic, and others were saying, go back to Poland. A group of demonstrators chanted, we say justice, you say how, burn Tel Aviv to the ground. Quote, Hamas, we love you. We support your rockets too. Red, black, green, and white, we support Hamas's fight. It is right to rebel. Al-Qassam, give them hell. A person in the encampment said during a speech, let it be known that it was Hamas, the October 7th massacre that put the global intifada back on the table again. And it's the sacrificial spirit of the Palestinian freedom fighters that will guide every struggle on every corner of the earth to victory. Remember that militancy breeds resistance. Thousands upon thousands of students around the world have moved to rebel because of your militancy. Members of the encampment created a human wall after a leader yelled, Zionists have entered the camp. Leader then directed the people there to take one step forward and push them out.
Who are the Zionists who have entered the camp?
Who knows? People gather and protest around a by any means necessary banner.
Did you see the story of the professor? It just reminded me. Did you hear the story of this professor? I can't remember what. She's not a citizen. She's on a teaching visa or something like that. But she, I can't remember what university. This just happened. She took a break and flew over. I guess some Hezbollah leader died, and so she flew over to. I can't remember where it was, but Lebanon. She flew to Lebanon and to attend the funeral of this Hezbollah guy, along with all the leaders of Hezbollah, basically, and then came back to the United States. On her way back in, they stopped her and went through her phone and everything. She's not, she's not a citizen. She's, they went through her phone and all this stuff. And well, hey, why were you at this funeral? Oh, well, it was just a peaceful gathering of, we're just trying to attend to the needs of whatever. And they wouldn't let her in. They oh, no, can't come back. And she's like, but I live here, I teach here. And they're like, figure it out. Not coming back in. Yeah.
Do it remotely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one speaker told Columbia students during a speech, don't work, don't go to class, don't research, act out your Marxist and post-colonial ideas. Poster in the encampment read, a message to the scum of nations and pigs of the earth. Paradise lies in the shadow of swords. Glory to those who make the occupier feel bitterness. I mean, so this wasn't like, the government of Israel is committing atrocities. This is like very directed. It looks like a lot of it was directed towards individual students.
Well, to the extent that it is, they are absolutely violating their statute. So like that's
so what it looks like is, so this was back in April. The Biden White House was like, this messed up, guys, you got to do something about it. Nobody does anything. They're hiding behind the whole like, well, the department gets to choose who they have as their professors, and the disciplinary board, I mean, they're it's up to them. And it's like, okay, enough. Like, we gave you a whole year.
So
you're not going to do anything.
So you're a fan.
I understand the frustration, and I can see why, because this seems so egregious that it's like I can see why they would go this route. And I think ultimately, like, if you're the federal government and you're wanting some kind of return on your investment of like research dollars or student funding, and you're like, I mean, eventually, I mean, don't you think that, like, if there was remember when this happened to
dude, I mean, just
flip
it around.
Bob Jones.
Flip it around for a minute. But that was, they had a ban on interracial dating at Bob Jones. I mean,
yeah. And they're like, hey, that's our religious beliefs.
Right, but it's discriminatory. So
either
drop the no. What do you mean? So is this?
So like allowing this kind of thing to happen on a campus, letting these organizations break the rules, and then doing nothing
as it pertains to discrimination, not as it pertains to protesting the Israeli government. I mean, and I get, yes, the rhetoric's strong, right? But like, I mean, dude, we protested. Imagine if Jordan Peterson came over to lecture, for example. He's Canadian, whatever. He comes over and let's say that a case is made against him. His rhetoric is misogynistic. It makes the women people feel unsafe, blah blah blah, whatever. And they could just as easily rustle up a whole thing about that and say, if you're going to continue having Jordan Peterson and people like him come and lecture at your campus, this is what's going to, at some point you're just like, I don't know that that's the government's job or has any business doing that. It's
I think, and normally if you're just talking about, well, we're going to have some intellectual discourse that's going to involve sometimes bringing controversial people
are yelling at him, and he's causing a disruption on campus. He walks through, he gets harassed by, now granted, I mean,
it wasn't him,
but he's causing the ruckus by his presence. His
by
presence.
His presence. Just him being, look at what you made me do. Like, it's not, that's what abusive people say. No, I mean, I imagine it was us back during the Iranian hostage crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And what if at our school there were people chanting, like death to Iran, or like Iranians are all traitors, and it's like you using a bunch of racial slurs and all this other stuff. And it's like, would you feel like you could safely walk onto campus if there was like a giant group of people chanting and assaulting police officers, and they're like, if they point the finger at me,
we don't have to go back that far. This was going on right after 9/11. That if you were an Arabic student,
people got harassed, all sorts of stuff,
all kinds of stuff, and it was just as wrong then as it is now. But you didn't see this is the first time the government has interceded in this way.
Because what it looks like to me is that the university tried every method that they could to prevent people from being disciplined for their actions.
Well, and I'll give you that point. And in fact, so the counter argument to this too, and if you look at Khalil, to me, it's like, okay, I don't like the precedent. I don't like any of. To me, everything you do as any organization, you're establishing a precedent, and it's like from the view of the precedents that we're setting, I'm uncomfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, it's like, okay, well, this is a specific incident that is really out of hand, and so drastic times call for drastic measures, and I get that argument. It's like this guy apparently, I mean, dude, he was here on a student visa, and somehow within 6 months converted his student visa into a green card, which is unheard of. Like, so I mean, dude, there are people that have been here on various
being
visas
funded somehow
for years. So yeah, so then we should maybe look into how that happened, right? How did this guy get this visa? Was he brought in to create agitation? Who on this university board is? I mean, there's all kinds of things here to investigate. And in the meantime, conveniently, your funding is coming up, so we need to get a handle on this, and this is how we're going to do it. So, I mean, I don't think there's some initiative for the federal government to stamp out free speech. I don't see that, right? I think that's ridiculous. On the other hand, I'm uncomfortable with the way this is being deployed. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not in charge, so all I can do is sit here and carp about it and point out the things that I think are problematic, which I do think these things are problematic. I do think that this won't be the last time by any means that we see this kind of thing deployed, especially given how fast Columbia has basically caved on all these things. So I think I think they're using Columbia as to set an example for other schools. I'm uncomfortable with the idea that, because this is obviously on the counterpoint for the administration standpoint, but this is obviously something that is sponsored by and led by their donor group, which is very heavily pro-Israeli.
Yeah.
They have an agenda to stamp out any pro-Palestinian or pro. It's not really pro. I don't know anybody's pro-Hamas, but
these guys were.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. And you know what? And screw those guys. I mean, I don't have any problem saying it. Okay, Hamas can stuff it. I mean, I can't think of. I'm trying to think. Is there any other group in history that has achieved the diametric opposite of what they intended to accomplish over as long of a period of time?
Yeah.
Except for maybe the United States of America, who by our policies in the Middle East have created more havoc, diametrically opposed to anything that we would have wanted to create over there. So second only to us, I would say Hamas is about that ineffective. So they suck. I mean, the Palestinians, I don't know how the Palestinians, you got all these people there that have a right to, in my opinion, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, that is completely being taken away from them, not by Israel, but by Hamas. And it is really unfortunate. I mean, like, there's not there, and this is kind of where, the larger question of like, who's the bad guy over there? I mean, yes, it's a very nuanced thing. Hamas is obviously not a good faith actor, to put it mildly. The Palestinians absolutely have legitimate grievances over how they've been treated, and how, I mean, and these the actions the actions of the Israeli government, all they're doing is creating more terrorists, unfortunately, because there's you cannot squeeze a populace like that and continue to. There's a great movie, The Kingdom. You ever seen that? I think Peter Berg directed it. You familiar with the movie? I lost your camera. Well, hey, maybe he's having the same technical problems I was. But for those of you guys that are watching that haven't seen it, The Kingdom is this movie. It's all right.
Go ahead. Yeah, I haven't seen it.
So it's about this these terrorists in the Middle East basically blow up some building, and this response team goes in to clean up everything. And what they find is that bomb that blew up was actually just the small bomb, and the big bomb that was there was timed to go off after all of the first responders and everybody else had gotten on scene, and then it blew up and killed all those people. And as a result, this like super team gets flown in. I think it's Jamie Foxx, a couple other people. It's a great movie. Jennifer Garner, whatever. They go in there and they are just like, okay, we're going, and they literally like, because their best friends were part of the people that were killed over there. And so at the very beginning, they're like, man, this is not going to stand. We're going to go over there and kill them all, basically, right? And so they go over there and they are very successful at eradicating this terror group, whatever, this terror cell. Well, at the very end, not to spoil anything for you, but it's a great movie. At the very end, the mastermind of the whole thing gets taken out, and he gets killed in this flurry of bullets or whatever. And his young grandson is basically runs up to him and is holding his hand and is like, "Grandpa, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay." And he's like, "No, son, no, but you will." And grandson, kill them all. And it's such great parallel because it's like, dude, all this is just a cycle of recriminations that it goes back decades. And it's
like a never-ending repeat of kill 'em all.
Never-ending cycle of death. And it's just I don't smarter brains than me have tried to figure it out for a long time. So it's just
no, and I don't have a solution either, other than to turn the Gaza Strip into a new Riviera. No,
right.
No, I don't have a solution for that either. And I think one of the really sad parts about this whole thing is I hate having to like choose sides as a government, right? To like we're gonna ally ourselves with somebody. And I wish we didn't have to do that. Maybe we don't. Maybe it's like,
well, yeah, I would argue
keep us out of it,
well, I wouldn't argue. I would just ask, do we?
Yeah, maybe not. I don't know. This is like a really like the free speech thing for me like is very dear to my heart. And the thing about like being able to take federal funds and use that as a weapon. And I mean, one of the things that I was talking about on our campus, HCU campus, we have certain policies. It's a Christian school, and Baptist history, fairly conservative. And like some of our policies about, say, the human person and human dignity are simply not compatible with, say, trans ideology.
Mm-hmm.
Saying, oh, there's a way that God made you and it's beautiful and perfect. And you're like, no, like it's not. It was a mistake. And like, we can correct it through, all this stuff. And
ironically, very compatible with the gay and lesbian community, though.
Less incompatible, we'll say. Less incompatible. But it's like, well, if Harris had gotten elected, I think very likely we would be faced with the choice.
You would be getting letters like this.
Yeah, probably not immediately. It probably would have been like after a year or two, maybe a little bit longer, which would have been like, hey, you need to address this discriminatory policy that you have. And as soon as you take care of it, then cool. But until then, we're going to start, shutting off the taps. And given how much of our in any school like ours with so many first generation students, a lot of students, they're able to go because of some level of student loans, even if they're only taking out maybe 5 or 10% of their tuition in loans and something they can pay back easily. That's still, I mean, if you don't have the money, you can't go.
Right.
And so, I'm not sure how the university would have figured out how to do that. Like basically you choose to cease to exist, or, maybe there would have been some giant donation campaign where this could have been, you basically give up our accreditation or whatever. But we would have dealt with the same kind of thing. So like, I'm not at all like, oh, this power, this lever would never be used against people like me. It's like, no, I'm just telling people that it was about to be. Mm-hmm. So, okay, it's being used in this way. I hope that it's used as targeted as possible for a school that simply wasn't following their own policies. I hope that's the case. And it's one of those, I'm going to look into some more and find out like what exactly did happen between April of last year and now. Was this actually warranted? And if it turns out that it was really an effort to try to codify anti-free speech things, where it's like, hey, you're not allowed to protest certain things, then I think that would be like the worst of all possible outcomes. Like, even if you're protesting something, your position is truly stupid. Like if you're protesting out there, it's like, why are we save the whales? They should all have been destroyed. They're delicious, or something like that.
Right.
You should.
Where's my whale
be,
burger? Yeah.
Yeah, you should be allowed to protest that.
Yeah.
Even if though it's completely insane.
Yeah.
So if that turns out the case that that this is an effort to destroy free speech in one area, in any area, but like even in one like this, even if I agree or disagree, then I think that would be a really terrible outcome. So I'm hoping that in the final analysis, this was about getting a school to follow its own rules.
Yeah.
And so we'll see. But,
yeah. I think it's like that line of the Chumbawamba song, right? You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, right? I do think there's for some reason in society, it just feels like people are really quick to, I know my rights and you can't tell me what to do. It's like, but you can't participate in our community. So sorry, it's like I got invited to join some Facebook group, and a couple of days ago, I click it. And it's like, we believe these things and you need to know, and we need answers to these things. And I'm like, I don't feel like answering those questions. So just rescind my, my acceptance of your invitation. Right.
No, thank you. Yeah.
To me, it's like, that's what I like about the whole idea of freedom. It's like, we have the freedom to express ourselves. You have the freedom to assemble. You have the freedom to also not assemble. And you're not one of us. And, you're not welcome here. And I think it's,
you get to pick who your friends are.
Yeah, you get to pick who your friend. Did I ever tell you about the time that I went to? I was between schools. So you brought up that I was my first school, Pensacola Christian College. I did get expelled from that school, and I got expelled
involuntarily withdrawn from class.
Oh no, they put expelled on there. It was nice big words. Yeah, nice big word, expelled. Yeah, and
badge of honor.
Well, and so to meet new people and kind of like, okay, well, I'm on my own down here, or whatever. In between, I started visiting different schools, and I was recruiting at the time too for my summer job. And so I had a chance to visit a lot of different college campuses. And what I would do is I would go visit the Baptist Student Union, the BSU, to meet new people, because I was a Baptist, and Baptist Student Union is just a great thing. This is all these colleges have the BSU there. And so I was at, I think it was at Wake Forest or Duke, one of the two. And I did a quick look up, and the BSU, they're having a meet and greet, lunch, whatever. I go down there and walk into this room and ask the girl at the thing, is like, oh, is this the BSU? Yeah, it is. Oh, you're here to, I'm here for the lunch and learn, the meet. Like, oh, that's great. Come on in. Here's the name tag. And I'm meeting a bunch of people, eating sandwiches, whatever. And I'd been in there for I was in there for 10, 15 minutes, and I started looking around. I'm like, I don't see, am I the only white person in here? And I just was I was at the Black Student Union.
It took you a minute.
But that's how, to me, that's like the height of
Are you here for the BSC? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You guys.
Right, yeah, sure.
Okay. And about 20 minutes in, when I finally kind of clarified with somebody I was talking, hey, just out of curiosity, what this is the Baptist Student Union? No, the Black Student Union. I was like, oh. I was like, man, I'm so embarrassed. I turned bright red. I'm so sorry. Gosh, you guys must think I'm an idiot. And they're like, no, we love it. Stay, hang out. You're great. And so I was their, I was their token koala, or whatever you want to call it.
Your the little mascot for the day.
To me, that's hey, that's what college and really this university experience to me is all about. It's this whole debate right now about should kids go to college or not, and are valid, so many valid career paths outside of college, and me personally, I don't have, I remember our parents were very much, I feel like you're going to go to college, but I don't feel like that for my kids. If they don't want to go, I don't care. I mean, I know supposedly statistics are you live like 5 years longer if you have a college degree. You make like I can't remember what it is, 100. It's either 100,000 or something more money over the course of your career.
Million.
Uh,
Million
a million,
dollars.
pardon me, $1 million. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, hey, that's nothing to sneeze at. That's what, 30 grand a year, 35 grand a year, supposedly. Um, I just, I, I've never used my, but all the experiences that I got and things
Mhm.
like that, it's like, man, I just it's such a door opener to go and meet and hang out. And if you come away with ideas that make us grow as people and grow as a society and a culture, then I think it's great. I just think right now. I mean, I don't know that I could get away with that today. Like if that was happening today and I walked into the wrong room like that, like it would have been like, uh, I I don't know because I'm not in that alternate reality, but I suspect it would not have been as
The
chill,
world of the '90s was, I think, a kinder place.
which is a weird thing to say,
Yeah.
Yeah, because you feel like the march of time, progress, all that. I don't know how much progress we've made in the last 30 years. So my
I
phone's
blame
definitely better.
I blame social media. Actually, I blame podcasts. We're part of the problem.
We're part of the problem. Hey, that's what we should call our podcast. Part
We're
of the
part of the
problem.
problem. We're part
I like that. All right. Well, man, this is a good combo. In fact, hang out after we go off live because we got logistics to talk about here for a second.
All right.
But yeah,
Well,
thanks for
we don't
watching,
want
guys.
everyone else to hear about those.
Yeah, you
So
don't need to know. You don't need to know.
you
You're not
don't.
invited.